Hi, and we're going to have a look at the game from the 5th round of the Grenke Chess Classic. And well, okay, it's hard not to give a spoiler, but I'll spoil the result. We didn't have a single decisive game today in the 5th round of the Grenke Chess Classic. But it was not for lack of trying. I mean, I thought yesterday we had some games that were very uneventful, but the same can't be said about the games that were played today. So Meier had the white pieces and he's playing against Carlsen, and this time he plays at d4. We already saw a game where he played against Caruana, where he played e4, probably expecting the Petrov or such an opening, but I think d4 is his regular stuff. Carlsen goes for e6, which again, his regular stuff. Either going for the Nxd2 in case of knight c3, or keeping the options open, going d5 in some cases. We see knight f3 from Meier, and as we know from the Alpha 0 matches, if b6 we have the Queen's Indian. This is what Karakin likes to play, but here Carlsen likes to go for d5. So we will get, well, after most likely a Queen's Gambit declined, but after g3, which is what Meier played, we have a Catalan. And yeah, I already mentioned that I thought he usually was playing Catalan type positions, and turns out I was right. So here Carlsen plays bishop b4. Now this looks a bit curious because after bishop d2, the bishop goes back to e7. Now this is a little subtlety that you see in several openings, and the point is that black claims that the bishop being on d2 is worth the tempo. In most cases, white would like to play bishop d2 castle, and then the most natural square for the bishop is usually to play b3 and to fianchetto it on b2. But here, after bishop d2, that's going to take a bit long to execute. So black claims that this is worth the time and investment. So we don't get the mainline Catalan, but instead a different position. And this has been seen many times. Castles, castles, knight b to d7, queen to c2, c6. So black is going for a closed Catalan type of structure. He takes on c4, that's the open Catalan, but here black is playing it more close to the vest. And now the most popular move is what Meier played, and that's bishop f4, which shows that the bishop doesn't really belong here on d2, so black sort of gets the tempo back. He played bishop b4 and back to e7, but white on the other hand played bishop d2 and then he moved the bishop to f4, so it evens out. Now since white hasn't developed this knight here, black has time for knight e4 because there's no control by a white knight of the e4 square, and this allows black to set up a stonewall structure with f5. Now here the most common move is to play knight to c3, but then I'm sure that Carlsen had in mind to play g5 here, which produces double-edged positions. This has been played already by Carlsen against Elyanov in 2016. Also, Nakamura played this against So in 2017. So an interesting option. I'm sure that Carlsen had his eye on a win in this game, so this is something he wanted to try. But Meier plays h4, which already just prevents this idea. So no more g5 ideas for black. And probably a solid option because, okay, h4, what does it do? It weakens the g4 square. You don't have the usual h3, but on the other hand, black doesn't have a knight or any piece ready to go to g4, and wouldn't really be doing much on g4 anyway. So h4 is probably a fine move. We saw knight d to f6. White kind of finishes the element here with knight b to d2. Carlsen took, and now he played knight to h5. So naturally, white does not want to give up this bishop. Well, the pawn chain would collapse, so bishop e3, and now f5. So finally black has set up this stonewall pawn structure. But white is very solid. Bishop f3, queen e8, protecting the knight. So I would say that, okay, white is probably still slightly better, but black is very close to equalizing. But how to win with black, it's really difficult, and you need to take some risks, take some chances. And I'm sure that Carlsen was expecting a long game here. Bishop to g5 was played by Meier. Bishop knight to f6, taking the bishop, although it produces a double pawn. It also means that this knight doesn't really have any cozy square to jump back to. So this is fine for white. Let's say queen here. You also have to watch out for takes and probably protect the pawn knight f3. And here you have to be really careful about the white getting well, protecting the pawn and getting a very juicy knight against the bad bishop, which is the dream, strategic dream for white in such a position. Now, of course, the world champion does not allow this. He plays knight to f6, e3 by Meier. Very often we see this pawn formation with in conjunction with the bishop on the light square bishop, which is usually on g2, but here on f3, kind of tones with the bishop, the pawns covering a different color complex. So white is very solid here. Rook a to c1, bishop a6. Some pressure here, but nothing really going on yet. Knight to e4 by Carlsen. We have the bishop trade on e7 and bishop back to e2. So still, white very solid. He has a good pawn structure. And for black to try to win here, like I said, it's really difficult. Carlsen decides to pull back the bishop to b7. This probably means that he probably has his eyes set on some kind of a c5 break in the future. But b4 by Meier already plays against that. Rook a to c8. So Carlsen trying to stay solid, but now c5 by Meier, and this is grabbing some space on the queen side. And again, black has to be careful. You can't allow white in some cases to get the knight into e5, which will be a very juicy outpost. And if you take on d2, which Carlsen didn't do, then you risk that you're left with a poor bishop here. White has placed his pawns on black squares, a very nice pawn structure, which works very well with the bishop because it's free to move. Meanwhile, black's bishop is blocked by its own pawn. So here it's kind of tricky for black what to do, and Carlsen decides to well, try to do something, and yeah, it turns out this is the #1 engine move, and he plays e5, trying to mix things up. Yeah, play against this e5 square, try to get some play. Meier took, and now he took on e4. I would have been tempted by trying some kind of knight f3 to d4. I think white is still a bit better here. Meier goes for the simplification. He takes on e4, f takes e4, and queen c3. Again, trying to go for this ending with a good pawn structure. Pawns on black squares with the well, dark squares, as somebody corrected me, along with the light square bishop. But of course, Carlsen doesn't want that because white would just be strategically better there. So he plays queen f5, keeping the queens on. Now a4. Okay, makes sense to try to do something on the queen side. He has some initiative there. g5 now by Carlsen. Meier took. And although we traded this pawn here and we did weaken our structure, white is still very solid because the only real break for black is to play h5, h4, and that's pretty easily rejected by rook h1, which would cover this. So rook c7, trying to get some forces over to the king side, perhaps trying to do something there, but I think white is very solid. Rook h1, rook g7, and this has a not so sneaky threat, I believe, of taking on f2. Rook c to g1 was played. I think Oh, I forgot to change to the main board. Forgive me for that, I don't know how long I did that. But let's go back to the variation, just to demonstrate. If c takes b6, we have this not so subtle threat of taking, and then rook f7 is giving mate a few moves. So going back to the main board, which is supposed to be blue, rook c to g1 was played by Meier, and this of course defends g3 in case of rook takes f2, queen to f5, but now rook f1 protecting the pawn. And Meier is very solid. I think this position, it's probably drawn. Not much either side can do. But Carlsen tries to do something. Bishop a6. Now what is this? Taking, we play queen here. And it turns out that this is checkmate. Because if you go to g1, I take here. And this is immediately mate. A very nice apple mate. Not a frequent guest in tournament practice, but seem to recall Carlsen pulling it off against Sipke Ernst once. Okay, king here, mate, and if king here, we swing a rook, either one here and here, followed by checkmate. So this bishop can't be captured, and obviously Meier saw this, and he played b5, cb, and now he flicked in rook h5. And perhaps bishop a6 was a little bit risky for Carlsen, and he's probably just worse here, because now we have this pin here, we can take this pawn when we please, and now this is weak. And there are no real weaknesses for white, he's easily covering this, and actually this king is probably weaker than white's. Let's see what happened. Bishop to b7, c takes on b6. Carlsen took on a4, which probably isn't good. After b takes a7, the initiative firmly belongs to white. And here the players were in severe time trouble. Bishop a8 by Carlsen, and now rook to g5. Probably the ending is quite good for white if you take on g5, which wasn't played. Oops, what? Oh, I pushed some patterns that I didn't intend to. I now need to find the variation. Where am I? Here, okay, yeah. Because now we can just take, play rook a1, take this, and we have a very juicy pass pawn and a blockade, so it should be good for us. So instead, Carlsen played queen takes a7, so let's get the board color. Queen takes a7, bishop to g4, and this should be just winning for white. You know, all the pieces are coming in, you have these pieces already attacking. Everything is lined up. King h8, getting out of the line of fire for now. And here is where Meier could have finished the job. Now there are several good moves here, and unfortunately he didn't play, well, one of those. He played rook a1. Unfortunately for Meier, fortunately for Carlsen and his fans. Now, there were some options. Rook h5, which is suggested by the computer, looks absolutely devastating. The main thing here is, let's say a move like a3, bishop e6, and okay, a blank move, a bad move, and now we see the threat, which makes this so devastating. Rook takes h7. The rook can't take, so you have to take with the king, and now the queen gives checkmate. So this is very hard to play against for black. Rook h1 turns out to be another great move. Here, more or less the only move is to play queen to e7. And white can take on h7, and this is just devastation in the station. And both players missed that white can play rook h5 here, and now rook to h6. And this is just beautiful. The main point is, if you take, then queen h5 is a very unusual mating pattern, which probably explains why they missed it in timetrouble, because it's not a natural pattern that you see very often. And the other idea is if king here, then queen to h5 is mating, rook here takes, and king here mate. So any of these moves, and Carlsen is just in deep duty. So yeah, we can safely say that Carlsen escaped by the skin of his teeth in this game. So rook to a1 was played here by Meier in timetrouble, and this actually allowed Carlsen to escape here after queen to e7. There's a double attack. You can't avoid the trade. You can't move the queen because this is under attack, so you have to trade somewhere. And Meier traded on e7, and after that there's nothing to play for. 3 pawns for each side, no real pawn break, the weakness is easily covered, so a draw was agreed. So a nice escape by Carlsen. That was really close, but of course every game was drawn, so that means we have the same position. Caruana, MBL and Vidyukov leading, with Carlsen half a point behind. And like I said, this will be an exciting tournament. This will go down to the final round, I'm sure of it, and I'll try to stay, keep you posted and keep posting videos after every round. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.